what we are seeing is our big box competitors, turns out they're getting cool. They're getting good. They're getting better at what they do. And some of the things I love is what is happening in that adjacent community of big box gyms doing the right things for the first time in a long time.
This is All Things Fitness and Wellness, uniting industry thought leaders and fitfluencers on the mission to inspire innovation and encourage people to live a life fit and well. On this episode of the ATFW Podcast, I'm joined by Brandon Cullen, co-founder at MADabolic. We dig into how MADabolic has scaled with intention, staying true to its brand while expanding across markets. Brandon shares what it takes to build a boutique fitness concept that doesn't chase trends, why disciplined programming matters, and how to grow without losing your core identity. If you're thinking about franchise systems, evaluating boutique concepts, or just looking to sharpen your brand strategy, this one's packed with practical insight. Oh, and fair warning, it ends a little abruptly once we realize we're from the same hometown and I used to dog sit for his parents. Small world. Before we get to the podcast, be sure to hit like and subscribe. We have new episodes weekly featuring industry thought leaders and influencers. I'm your host, Krissy Vann, and this is ATFW. Well, I am stoked today to have Brandon Cullen on the podcast. First and foremost, this is your first time on ATFW. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, it's great. Thanks for having me.
And we had a little chat here getting started. I have to commend you because you mentioned you do some podcasting yourself. So thank you for being so beautifully prepared. Your audio is crisp and fabulous.
Well, thank you very much.
Let's just dive in here to the early days of MADabolic. I'm just curious, what gap in the fitness market were you trying to fill and how has that vision held up over time?
Yeah, so we stepped into strength and conditioning as a business in the mid to late 2000s. My co-founder and I both had a background training ourselves. And I started training people in my early 20s, but we both came from a professional hockey background. Strength training was a huge part of our game because I think we were just like naturally gifted players, and that was that controllable. And if you think of late 2000s, that was kind of the birth of CrossFit. And I would call that sport-specific training. And boutique hadn't really hit its stride yet. We had seen some of the early concepts, like Orange Theory was kind of first to market. But it wasn't what it is today. So at that point, we saw this massive gap in the industry with, you had sport-specific training on one end, and then you kind of had your YMCA level boot camps or your Les Mills kind of boot camps or anything, Golds, like all the big box gym boot camps. And being two guys that were past their sport that still wanted to not compete, but wanted to strength train and wanted to continually chase strength and conditioning into our 50s. We thought, what was the program for people past their sport that wasn't as technical as, say, the sport of fitness, and that actually was real training in comparison to just your entry-level boot camp hit kind of things. So weirdly, we've been kind of refining that model for close to 15 years now. And the funny thing is, Krissy, is the same hole still exists. The old boot camp style companies are now brick and mortar brands, but the level of what is provided is kind of similar. And then you have high level sports specific training. So the gap we hope to fill, we're still trying to fill it.
Why do you feel that hole still exists so strongly? Because obviously there's a need and a want there.
Yeah, I mean, you really got to look at math, right? I mean, I know we hit a milestone this year with 1 in 4 people in North America, I think, now belong to a gym. Mm-hmm. And if you even break down that subset into, say, like 100 people, I'll start with saying I think the best workout or program is the one that gets you moving 5 days a week, whether it's ideal or whether it's best. I think in motion is the most important thing right now. So if I look at, say, like 100 clients, I think there is a lot of options for 80% of those people that just need something to get them moving. But I do think there is still that big gap for the 20% that are looking to do a little bit more with their fitness journey.
Well, I do feel like there's a huge shift happening in regards to people using fitness as a sport. I mean, you talked about the fact that your comeuppance was really the early days of CrossFit, all the rest of it. Now we're seeing endless fitness racing. I kind of call it, because it's completely my age group, the midlife crisis. Like, we really need to have a goal in our lives together moment, which is a beautiful thing because it's contagious. When other people see individuals doing these types of things, it motivates others to get started with it, and it also feels like there's less of a mental barrier for them to get moving. And it's interesting because we know the last couple of years, every single year, there's trend list, trend list, trend list, and strength training has just topped the list over and over again. But your philosophy has really been resisting chasing new fitness trends and things like that. So how has staying true to your brand philosophy really helped or challenged your growth?
Well, you and I both know that even 5 years from now, there's going to be something new that is going to catch people's eye for sure. I would say today that the CrossFit consumer of the late 2000s is the High Rocks consumer of today. Not much has changed. It's the same archetype. And I agree with you. Like, there's seasons in life that I think you should chase some stuff, whether that's your first marathon, maybe your first triathlon, maybe it is a version of fitness races. And I think that's fine. I think my argument is that game day can't be every day. And I think a lot of the fitness driven, competition driven aspects, the training program also looks a lot like the competition, and that's okay for that season, but it's not a sustainable thing that's going to allow you to safely progress into your 40s and 50s. So my big belief is the same things you did as a young athlete or someone new to fitness, kind of those building blocks that you started maybe in your late teens to early 20s. I think those are the things you also have to get back to if you want to maintain a certain level of fitness in your 40s and 50s, especially if you're not worried about a sport. And even if you are worried about a sport, you should really compartmentalize training for that season and then get back to the base of the pyramid. You know what I mean? Like, no one, if you dumb it down to say endurance athletes or runners, it wouldn't be healthy for a runner to run a marathon once a week. You know, I mean, you might have a 12 to 16 week training camp that allows you to get to that event that will probably beat you down pretty good. Not only the training, but the race itself. But then for the other 9 months of the year, you really should be creating a sustainable structure that you can build on. That, and then, by the way, my opinion, but that's what we believe here.
Well, and it kind of segues perfectly into the business side of things, because I think a lot of those same philosophies work very well when it comes to growing a business. It comes down to the foundations versus the fad of the moment. And if you are going full tilt over a certain milestone, that's great, but that's also not sustainable. And one of the things that you've seen is significant franchise expansion in recent years. So what have you learned about selecting the right partners, and what should operators consider if they're thinking of going that route?
Yeah. And I mean, we are in these different seasons also within our business. What got us to 10 locations as two young, scrappy kids, we knew it wouldn't get us to 25. So then we took on the right kind of partners, the right kind of experience to look at that next level of scale. Once we got there, we knew 25 to 50 was going to be different. It was going to require I would call it strategic risk, because in our season of business, we have to see where it could go. And sometimes that stretches the original core values, because you have to see, like, where can this reach middle America? Can this reach slower suburban markets when you were built in more metro urban kind of markets? And I think this phase we're in right now, the 25 to 50, because we're about 44 locations now and should be at 50 by the end of the year. I think this was the biggest kind of learning phase because we took some chances. What about this sleepier suburban community with just a rock star owner? Can that work? What about an owner that checks some of the boxes, but you put them in the best market ever? And kind of what we found, which we'll have to fine tune, is a great operator can make a lot of markets work, and a bad operator can kill even a great market. So I know a lot of franchisors, they hate when I speak to this kind of thing, but at a young, immature kind of franchise at that huge level of growth, you have to chance some things to get the flywheel going to see what could be. And then you sometimes have to course correct to get back to who you are. And we are right in that kind of feeling out process right now. That is, it's extremely demanding. And at times tiresome, but I don't think you can get to 100 without going through this figuring out phase.
It's like a metaphor for life. Anything that we do, that messy middle bit is often not what people want to hear. They're like, can I just skip past that, please? But we know that doesn't work for any facet of life. I mean, that's kind of what I love about fitness in general, and the fact that it's a core of so many business owners and operators in this space. Because I'm like, we get it, because you get it from that. And then you have to live it out over and over again in these different life phases. But I'm curious because, I mean, who you're working with as franchisors is so important. When you say those bad operators, like in your mind, what are some things that have come up for you that would quantify a bad operator?
Oh, that's a hard one, right? Because you almost attach the word bad to like a bad person, and it's not that. Because a lot of things that people don't understand in a franchise agreement or a marriage, things can change. Like the life of the franchisee. If kids are introduced, if there's a financial hurdle within maybe the other side of their finances, it's not always just it's not always the system doesn't work, and it's not always just the person. It can sometimes be their season of life. The other thing that's kind of funny too, that we've used the word like relationship a few times on this recording here, but when you at some point in your life were attracted and maybe dated someone that was just completely different than you. They were intriguing, they were different, they made you feel alive type thing. Well, oftentimes, like especially a brand like ours, like we are going to look so different, so intriguing, and it excites you, and all of a sudden you get into the marriage and you're like, woo, that's not me actually. And that happens, right? And the weird thing, there's not really a personality test or a balance sheet we can fill out that helps the franchisee understand who they are. So a lot of times you'll qualify these people based on meeting them in person. They are financially able to do the investment. They check the boxes, say the right things, but then once you open, some adversity hits, and you realize you are now running maybe a business for the first time. I haven't found that that pressure test to introduce to understand that until you are open. And the best thing you can do then is just help them either become that person or help them move potentially the investment to someone that better fits that scenario. And that's the reality of business. Like small business is hard. I mean, the statistics of, businesses succeeding or failing over 1, 3, and 5 years. I mean, franchise systems, we're still exposed to that. And you don't know, right? You just don't know. The franchise, a great franchise system provides operational playbooks, best practices, marketing, brand recognition, a lot of things that if you have to go out on your own could be tough to figure out. But at the end of the day, it's a business owner running a business within a bigger business. And there is a lot more tricky things to navigate than people may believe when you're told, hey, this is a turnkey system that just works for everyone. Because there's a human element to a hospitality business that it kind of just is what it is, and you can't teach that human element.
I really appreciate how you started that in the fact that you would easily be able to associate hearing bad in front of a word and associate as the person, but there is a differential between the person and operator, as in running a business. So if there is somebody that is enticed by a business model and thinking that, hey, I might want to jump into this and open a franchise, what would you say would be some good questions to ask themselves before
Yeah.
diving into something like that? What are you hoping people, if they're approaching you, have asked themselves?
Yeah, I think if you're extremely entrepreneurial and wired, you definitely have to ask yourself, am I okay being an operator? And I know that's hard to separate because a lot of marketing in the franchise world will say like be your own boss or be an entrepreneur. What they don't say in the fine print is this might be your first entrepreneurial activity. It might be your first business you've ever owned. Now, if you are a seasoned entrepreneur that has built and enjoys building and likes being a visionary, I think what you have to ask yourself is, am I willing to buy into the system and be more of an operator? And you can be an amazing operator, right? But if you are that visionary person, it might not be the move for you. Like if I'm very visionary and I like building. If I wanted to do a franchise for just some extra income, I would have to buy into something where I didn't want an opinion. I knew the system worked, I believed in it, and I just allow it to print money for me by operating within their standards and not be a challenger. So I feel like that's a good question to ask yourself is like, could I be a great operator, or am I more wired to be a builder and creator and a visionary? Because that can be a real fun head to head.
No doubt. Well, and I mean, I imagine it's a curse and a blessing because exactly that. You obviously know formula works, you're growing, but you do have people that are entering the arena all of a sudden that have different perspectives. Maybe they see different blind spots. So, how do you balance by staying true to who you are as a brand and also working with some of these different opinions or experiences and where they may be helpful in regards to growth trajectory going up versus it being a hindrance where you're all of a sudden having headbutting crashes all the time?
Yeah, you definitely, there's no avoiding it from every person I've talked to that's in my position, like conflict, friction, that's all part of being in the franchisor's seat or the system's seat. I think you're best to choose your battles on the things to enforce. It's also better to do with data. And the one thing that you mentioned, it's a blessing and a curse. So when you look at a healthy franchise system, you'll typically have about 20% that really overachieve. Weirdly enough, a lot of times those are entrepreneurial driven, like go-getters. And then you have kind of 20% that can struggle and underachieve. And that might just be one of those things that it wasn't the right fit and neither of us caught it. And then you have 60 in the middle that should do very well. In our opinion, you should build your systems for the 60 and don't overthink the outliers, because the top performers, they would probably be top performers wherever you stuck them, right? They're just those kind of people. And then the people in the bottom, whether it's a season in life that's not working, or it was the wrong culture fit, or honestly, they're just not good operators, you can't really build system for those outliers. So we try to really focus on that 60% in the middle and try to make decisions that strengthen that nucleus more so than the outliers.
No, and I know that you said obviously things have shifted from when you're scaling from 1 to 10 and then the next chunk. And now you're in this new phase of growth. But there's a lot of people that are listening, I'm sure, that have similar goals. They're wanting to get that growth trajectory. So along that journey, let's break it down into 3 phases, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
What were the biggest learnings in each of those chunks? Like the challenges maybe that you didn't see coming that you would give advice to your former self now?
Yeah, I mean, me personally, and I've said this on too many podcasts for anyone that enjoys listening to my voice, but I realized early that I really was more of that visionary creator and leader, but I was a pretty shitty like manager of people. Like it's just not a skill set that I have the temperament for. And you're always working at it, but like, I want to chase excellence, and that's kind of what I expect. And I realize that it's a pretty ignorant statement to think everybody just thinks and operates like me. In fact, if you did, we wouldn't have a very successful system. So like, making sure that, not to be cliche, but to have the right people in the right seats in your organization is important. The other thing I would say too is to really evaluate what you want to do with the business. There's a framework I like from an author named Greg McEwen. I think it's called the Essential Intent Formula, but it's essentially, who do you serve? Who do you want to serve? And when do you want to do it by, kind of thing. And one of the things that I often admit to, we are a franchise system, but we are kind of like the complete opposite of a cookie cutter fitting into the industry kind of thing. And that can have a little bit more of a ceiling. But I think being honest with that ceiling early, and rather than catering to more of the masses, just kind of laser focusing in on who your core consumer is, I think is important. And a lot of times when people hear that, they almost attach something negative to it, but that can be done in a very exclusive environment or a very inclusive environment. Someone's daycare is another person's nightmare, is the way I would put it. And someone's pop music, I'd rather stab my ears with a fork, and neither is right or wrong, but knowing who you want to chase and really catering your entire offering and your support towards that. Easier said than done, but if you can identify what you want to do early and hold true to that, there'll be less headaches.
I'm curious, were you ever tempted to waver? Because it sounds like it was a quite laser focused goal, but knowing that there's a ceiling, was that ever a temptation, or you were just kind of like, nope, this is who we are and this is how we're going to do it?
I think we have wavered. And if anything, I think what you'll see over the next couple of years is us getting back down to exactly who we are. We are the best strength and conditioning gym in the boutique fitness industry. There's no one who makes me nervous, even close, about what we put on the floor. The issue is you still deal with everyday people. You still have to be good in the lobby. You still have to make sure they feel seen and supported and heard. So like that, it gets a little tricky, right? I think in this 25 to 50, we had to soften a little bit to see where it could work. Because here's a good example. I feel like I'm dancing around the topic, but if you've ever seen and we have seen it, if you've seen a company that was built in Manhattan or LA and they go to scale, it's very different when you stick a Soul Cycle in Middle America beside a Lens Crafters. It's going to look very different than Manhattan. And I would say Soul Cycle should never look to do a unit there. And they have scaled back. Barry's was a similar way. When you think of when Rumble Boxing was bought by Exponential Fitness, they came out of just powerhouse cities and are now going to scale, and it's not going so well, because what it was built to do was not built to serve the masses. So it's not right or wrong to target the masses or to target the elite or to target just a subset that lives within all of these. But knowing who you want to serve, is pretty important.
Yeah, that's an absolute essential. In regards to infrastructure for franchisees, I mean, technology, obviously, everyone's talking about AI and this, that, and the other. Are there any tools that you have implemented to help streamline operations that have been exceptionally helpful that truthfully you didn't have at your disposal when you started this business because it is evolving and changing so rapidly?
Yeah, us as a company, we've made a commitment not to get too wrapped up in a lot of the technological stuff. But when you just talk about tech stacks, I mean, during COVID, we took a lot years of pamphlets and PDFs and built them into more of a robust LMS learning management software that it's hard to imagine how we did it before now.
Well, don't worry. We're the same generation that used MapQuest and take
crazy,
directions
right?
to our dashboard. So we are adaptable creatures.
Yeah. We white labeled a project management software for our openings. So there's like 170 steps from signing your franchise agreement to opening your doors the first day. And like it is categorized based on specific team members that own specific roles. Again, something that when I look back 10 years ago, try to think like, how did we do that? And recently, a lot of the communication assets that we have now, we try to utilize them. So say like the lead journey process, getting to know the client a little bit before they get into your lobby to enhance the human experience. So I'm always torn on this, right? Like a very successful MADabolic location will have 300 members, like that's a real good business. And I think you can make an argument that I don't think you need that much automation to say hello to 300 people. I know some of my franchisees would think I'm crazy, maybe even some of my team members, but I also remember running gyms with 300 and 400 members without having anything. And it forced you to be more personable in the lobby. It forced you to understand your clients. So I don't know half the time if it's helping us or if it's making us a little bit more lazy, but I think if you use it correctly, it can be a very powerful tool only if it's used to enhance the user experience and the human side of the business. Because from my vantage point, I'm not a fan of where we're headed. I like in-person everything. And even if we do go that way, the hole to fill would be the in-person human hospitality aspect that enough people still do crave. So I could care less which way it goes because there's always going to be people that want to come to the place of business to see a smiling face, to receive an amazing experience.
I mean, elaborate on that because that is a huge topic of conversation now. Or even you see, because of labor shortages, there are tons of gyms in Europe, and we're starting to see the concepts here where there's staffless. And to your point, a lot of people need social interaction that they're not getting in their daily lives. These are the third spaces, fourth spaces that they're getting it. So how do you feel when you see concepts like that pop up?
Yeah, you know what? I feel like so much changes and so much doesn't, because what I am seeing is the Peloton user of today was the P90X user of 20 years ago.
I threw up the first time I did that. Funny.
Yeah, it's just a
and then I laid in my bathroom for several hours. It was just like, I had very big, audacious goals that went very sideways very quickly.
It just seems like it's a sexier product. So now you have a mirror on your wall instead of watching a DVD series. I think the big box consumer is going to get a more elevated version where you show up to the machine and they already know what reps to use. But I don't think that the at-home user is going to become a big box user. The big box user is going to become at home, and the boutique person is still going to be the boutique person. I used this analogy once. There are people that make their Folgers coffee at home. That's not going anywhere. And there are some people that stumble into Dunkin' Donuts on their way into work, and they get their good enough coffee. There's a hybrid in between that is Starbucks, which was at once this elevated experience just above Dunkin's. And now there's Blue Bottle Coffee that is a more espresso driven, very experience driven type model. Guess what? They all work and they're not going anywhere. It's just, I don't find it as complicated as people like to make it noisy on the right message board. I don't think it's that complicated.
Fair enough. Well, and you're in a phase of growth. So obviously the non-complicated mindset is working well in your favor. So on that note, you have provided such great actionable feedback for those that are looking to play in the franchise space, learn a little bit about what lessons you've had along the way. As we look ahead over the next 5 years, let's start when you're looking at franchising. What do you think the biggest potential risks are? And obviously this is high level because there's going to be business specific, but what would you say are some of the potential risks or pitfalls?
So we've seen a lot of the big money shift towards recovery in boutique lately. I think that's an extremely risky investment to jump into, say, like a contrast therapy standalone concept. And the reason I say that is I do believe the big box gyms, this will just become a standard. So whether you go to a Crunch or even like here in Charlotte, our YMCAs are as nice as any gym in North America. Like they're on the level of like kind of Lifetime and Equinoxes. They're that nice. And even like think of when Planet Fitness put tanning beds in their change rooms. They are capitalized enough to drop a cold tub and a sauna as part of their offering that I do believe it could be very risky to have a standalone expensive offering where you just go somewhere for contrast therapy. I think that could be true of assisted stretch. I think boutiques' risk is that there's going to be a consolidation. I think the hobby gyms that were strong enough years ago, I think you're going to see the strong get stronger. And hopefully, you know, we will be on the side of that. The thing I know about strength and conditioning, I mean, not that much has changed. We still squat, hinge, push, pull, jump, land, throw. Like that's how the body moves. We package it differently. But I do think if you are a one-dimensional thing, you got to be a little bit careful, because the one great thing about strength and conditioning is it translates into everything. Mm-hmm. I mean, a good strength program can make you stronger at running, yoga, anything. Running and yoga make you stronger at running and yoga. And if you happen to have a franchise model that essentially is a brick and mortar business, and you decide to do one thing, you have to be the best at that one thing, because what we are seeing is our big box competitors, turns out they're getting cool. They're getting good. You know, they're getting better at what they do. And some of the things I love is what is happening in that adjacent community of big box gyms doing the right things for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, it's so true. Even like myself, obviously, I've been exposed to the B2B side, but I started out as a competitor and a fitness consumer. I love it. Lifting weights and putting things up and down became my sport. Yep. I was terrible at sports as a kid. So it was nice to actually find my groove. But to that point, I used to be the person that would have a ClassPass membership because I did like the social element of a boutique experience. And then I liked my place to have headphones on. Though I'm such a smiley person, it's the only place I, some reason, look very mean and unapproachable, and I just want to lift my weights. But the concept Altea ended up opening in the city of Vancouver. And I've felt for the boutiques in that area because exactly that. They basically swallowed up a bunch of the top instructors in the city, mirrored all the concepts that were in their vicinity, and they've done a really good job of it to the point they've been waitlisted essentially since they're open. And so it is a bit of a dangerous game when there are people that do have the capital to kind of be able to mirror and emulate that. That being said, there's boutiques in my area that I will still pay a drop-in fee to go to because you cannot emulate that in that space. They're just not successful at it. So it kind of just illustrates your point to such a big way, even for those that are in the business, but can differentiate and use that consumer brain. It's so effective. I'm curious because I know we talk about risks, but at the same time, I always love to leave on a positive note.
Sure.
So for those in the franchise space, what are the biggest opportunities that you see for the next 5 years? And what are your goals? I mean, you're scaling. So is this like a plan? You want to exit one day, or you see yourself going to the moon and taking this global?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, personally, I think, the dream is to build something great enough that you can exit and take care of your loved ones the way you hope to do it. And also, like, from an ego side of things, and this is me talking to say I did it. So, not a popular take, but sorry. A lot of hard work goes into being an entrepreneur and hopefully seeing through what you set out to do.
I'm going to pause you there and just say, stopping oneself and wanting that moment of, yay, I did it, shouldn't be perceived as a negative at all. Most humans never actually pause and give them credits for things. It's normally people working on inner narrators that are negative and trying to get rid of those. So I'm just saying a healthy level of ego is a good positive quality, not a negative.
Yeah, well, I'll take that. I agree. I 100% agree. Ego moves the needle. So it's okay. As far as like what we are trying to do, it's still a very similar goal to when we took on private equity and new partnerships in 2019. Like, the goal was really to open 100 great units. To get to 100 great units is probably signing 200 franchise deals, hopefully 50 to 75% of those actually open. And then hopefully you maintain that 60% are doing good, 20% are doing great. And then you have to work on that bottom 20%, whether they are sometimes, in the worst case, to maybe close a unit, a better opportunity to move it to a better operator or person that's positioned best for that season of their life. So the goal is the same, 100 great units. I would be completely happy with myself, proud of my co-founder that we were able to do that. I mean, we were Canadian kids that came through major junior hockey, played minor league pro, had no education. So life is good. I have no complaints. If we got to that 100, it would be amazing. As far as opportunities, I do think boutique it's in a challenging point right now. I don't think it's going anywhere, but I do think there's going to be this feeling out process in the next 1 to 2 years. When you think of some of the biggest players that the industry's ever seen, Orange Theory's struggling from what I've heard. You're seeing some negative press with a couple years ago with the exponential kind of hit piece, F45 being forced to delist. So consumers are obviously nervous and they're aware. I think that gives us an opportunity to get a little better. And then what you and I know, we've talked about being probably around the same age. This industry is so cyclical. Like, I remember being an 18-year-old kid training for hockey, spinning. Right. And then it disappeared for a decade. It all of a sudden SoulCycle popped back up. And to your point, strength training is a rage right now. Well, strength training is not new. No. But I do think there's going to be a redefining of the boutique space. I think some of the things you could see with cost of real estate, money being expensive right now, I think you could expect a more premium price point starting to surface. I think it has to. And I think you got to be really good at that one thing, because if you can go down the street to Crunch or on the high end of something, Lifetime, and get something, pretty good and close to my MADabolic workout, but I also get all these other things, that can become difficult as you cycle through different seasons. So you have to be so damn good that someone's like, I'll keep my Crunch membership, but I'm going to, I guess for me, MADabolic for my strength training.
Right on. before I leave you, I'm curious, where in Canada?
I grew up in St. Catharines, like just outside of
St.
Toronto.
Catharines. So, oh my God. So are you related to the Cullens that live in?
I am.
I used to take care of their puppies. I used to take care, oh my God, what were the name? The pugs.
That's
The
my
pugs.
parents.
Stop it.
Well, that is fucking wild.
Oh my God.
That is crazy. That's my parents. That's my mom and dad.
You've just listened to the All Things Fitness and Wellness podcast, hosted by Krissy Vann. Be sure to hit like and subscribe. We have new podcast episodes weekly featuring industry insiders and influencers. Together, we're on a mission for everyone to live a life fit and well.